I'm Robert Lawrence. I'm a senior fellow at the Peterson Institute and a professor of international trade and investment at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. I've been doing some work recently on US wage behavior. Wages in the United States have not done very well. And in fact, if you look at the data, this poor performance goes back a long time. The average hourly workers' wages seem to be flat, at least going back to 1970. So workers who are paid hourly haven't seen any rise in their real earnings over a very long period of time, almost 4 decades now. By contrast, if you look at the data for output per worker, productivity, labor productivity growth, what you see is it has been pretty robust, averaging around 2% a year. So there's this large gap between average hourly earnings, deflated, and productivity per worker. And the question that I've been exploring is what explains that gap? And basically, I've come up with 4 factors which allow me to account for much of the difference between these two variables. The first is that the sample, which is used to give us average hourly wages, doesn't include all workers. And what we know is that in the United States, blue-collar workers have done particularly poorly, whereas white-collar workers and workers who are more skilled and with an education level, at the college level, have done much better. And in fact, if we look at the wages of all workers, what we see is that they have grown, but still nowhere near as rapidly as productivity. There's still a large gap between what this group of workers, all workers have taken home, and productivity. Well, there's a second factor that I also explore, and that is the fact that in addition to take-home pay, workers also receive benefits. They get retirement benefits from their firms, and they also have received health benefits. When you add back those benefits, you close a little more of the gap. So if you look at what's called compensation, what you see is that it's risen somewhat more than simply average hourly wages. But we're still left with a large gap. And the question is someone walking off with some money? Is it going to firms? Is it going to profits? What explains that gap? Well, there is still a problem in the comparison that is often made. On the one hand, when people look at what's called real hourly earnings, they look at what workers can buy, what workers spend their money on. When people look at productivity growth, of course, they're looking at what workers have produced. And it turns out there are numerous goods and services which workers consume that they don't produce, most notably things like housing and rent. And then there's a whole set of goods which workers have produced which they don't buy, or which they don't buy in large amounts, and that's particularly investment goods. And so there's a significant difference between the price indexes for the goods that workers buy on the one hand, and the price indexes for the goods that workers produce. In fact, had workers actually bought the goods that they produced, since these goods have declined in price, as you will know, computers, for instance, have come down dramatically in price, workers would have seen a significantly higher increase in their wages. If you look at the way we measure output in these productivity numbers, they're measured as what's known as gross output. Basically, they don't take account of the fact that there is depreciation on the machines that are being used in production. And what's happened over time is that the kind of machines that we are using have much shorter lives. And the consequence is that depreciation has become a much bigger factor. So in addition to the other elements that I have spoken about, another part of the explanation is the fact that depreciation accounts for a bigger part of the output, and capitalists don't get that part of the output. What I conclude is that for the long period, from 1970 until 2003 or 2008, American workers have basically seen their wages rise at a rate that is quite similar to the output which they've been producing. It is not accurate to say that someone else has walked off with the money or there's something fundamentally wrong with the American capitalist system. In fact, the system is working exactly as we would expect. Workers are rewarded for the improvements in their productivity. That is not, though, true of the period since 2008. Over the past 6-7 years, what we've seen is unusually weak increases in wages. And this goes not only for blue-collar workers, but also for workers who have a college education. So we have seen a gap opening up, and we've also seen a significant rise in the share of national income going to corporate profits. So in the most recent period, we have seen an increase in income inequality along the lines of class. I've looked at trying to get behind that story, and what I find is that it also reflects a particular kind of technological change. Basically, the increases in productivity have been of the kind that tend to go far more to profits than to labor. So I would conclude that rather than look for something fundamentally wrong with the American system or the capitalist system, what we have to do is to explore why it is that we've seen a slow growth in the prices of the goods that workers have produced relative to the rapid growth in the prices of the goods that workers are buying, goods and services, I might add, things like healthcare on the one hand and education on the other.